Did you know that not all of your content has to come directly from you? And in fact, there are some really fun and creative ways you can get your audience to contribute to your content. That's what this week's podcast episode is all about.
Welcome to the Content 10X Podcast, the show where content creators learn how to harness the power of content repurposing. And now, your host, Amy Woods.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Content 10X Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and this week's episode is all about how we can involve our audience in creating our content by asking, curating, and creating new content in really fun and creative ways. So as I said, not all of your content has to come directly from you. There are just some really fun and creative ways you can get your audience to contribute to your content. Now, usually with content repurposing, we talk about focusing on your long form content first and then repurposing new content from there. But the beauty of the approach I'm about to share is that you can create short content, say a tweet or Instagram story that involves your audience and asks them to contribute ideas, questions, or stories. And then from there, you create your long form content. And if you're really smart, you can then repurpose that long form content too. Now, this idea actually came from seeing the way some TV talk shows curate their content. If you've been following my content for a while, you'll know that this isn't the first time I've turned to the late night TV shows for inspiration. In episode 137 of my podcast, I talked about how James Corden does an amazing job of segmenting his content for the Late Late Show and making the segments stand alone as mini shows in their own right. So do go check that out, content10x.com/137. But what can we learn from TV shows about curating content? Well, this time I've taken inspiration from the two Jimmys, so Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, and the way they use Twitter in particular to involve their audience in their content and actually curate their responses into content for their shows. Now, Jimmy Fallon will often tweet out a request for stories from followers or play games based around a hashtag. He's done things like All I Want for Christmas, Ask the Fallons, 5-word New Year's resolutions, change a TV show title with one word, and loads more. And these tweets get thousands of replies compared to the dozens or hundreds that he normally gets. And it makes sense, right? Because he's giving people the chance to be involved in his show, to share funny stories to a big audience and get some validation and just that chance to say, I was on the Jimmy Fallon show. And the hashtags, they trend worldwide. If you're on Twitter, you'll know what Jimmy's got planned, even if you don't ever actually watch the show. Then after a while, he'll take some great examples and make a segment out of it. He'll read out the responses, comment on them, and add his own ideas on the show itself. So it's such a clever way of getting an audience involved, and it has worked for him for years and years. And Jimmy does an amazing job of then repurposing these segments from his show into content for, say, YouTube and other platforms. And again, if you want to learn more about segmenting your content, I really recommend checking out episode 137 of the podcast called How to Segment Your Content for Ultimate Repurposing. Now, another example is Jimmy Kimmel and his infamous Mean Tweets segment. And this is curating content that already exists. It's not generating new ideas as such, but celebs read out mean tweets about themselves, and people love these clips. Curating content that is already available and repurposing it into its own segment is such a great idea. And these clips do amazingly online as well as on the show. So at the time I've recorded this, the most popular Mean Tweets video has over 83 million views on YouTube. So they repurpose content that already existed, use it in a new way on the show, and then repurpose the segment of the show for YouTube and got 83 million views. It's really, really smart, isn't it? Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode. So why is asking for and curating content from your audience so effective? Well, first of all, it gets your audience involved in your show. People love seeing their name in lights and being able to tell people, they were on TV. Now, your podcast or your video series, your blog probably isn't, as big as The Tonight Show. But if you have dedicated listeners or followers, a dedicated audience, there's chances they'll be really excited about being more closely involved in your content. So if you're gathering questions using a hashtag, you're also getting free advertising from everyone who participates. Every tweet, every story, every post that involves your hashtag will be shown to their followers too. So the potential for increasing your reach is really exponential too. And you'll build more affinity and interest in your future content. There's a famous quote by Edward Wilson that says, "If you teach me, I forget. If you show me, I remember. You involve me, I understand." And I think involving people, it just really, really works. Now, this is all about the TV talk shows. How could this relate to your content? So there are so many ways you can get your audience involved in contributing to your content. Here are just a few of them. So you could take the Jimmy Fallon approach and ask your audience questions in advance using a hashtag to get all the responses in one place. You could ask questions on LinkedIn and generate a long thread with lots of engagement. You could use native features on, say, Instagram and Facebook stories to ask questions. There's so many stickers that are there to engage with your audience and gather responses. Or maybe you could run a poll on any of the social platforms to test your ideas and opinions for the content that you are about to create. And say you interview guests in your content, maybe you could ask your audience if there are questions they want to hear answered. You could let them submit their own questions to you and even have a specific segment of your show dedicated to this. So the question of the week or the audience question of the week or something like that. And if you get people involved beforehand with this promise of a chance to get featured in your content, this can help really build a fan base or that fan culture around your content. And now people may even pay to get that closer access to you. So this could be part of a Patreon subscriber program with your content where only the Patreons get to submit their ideas or their questions, etc., with a chance to be featured in your content. And then there's just this chance that you could start trending before your main content has even gone out. And of course, you can repurpose your curated content to create even more content afterwards as well. So really just embrace it and have some fun with it. Perhaps you're not likely to get hundreds of millions of views like the two Jimmys, but that's really, really not the point. The reason this idea is effective is because it just lets you get closer to your audience, no matter what size they are. And if you can do that, you're going to see more content performing better. You're going to develop more connections and have more conversations. You'll see more conversions and you'll see your content help to grow your business. So I really hope that has inspired you to think about ways that before you've even created your content, you could involve your audience and then incorporate your audience into your content. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Content 10X podcast. I really do appreciate it. Now, if you haven't got a copy already, please do get a copy of my book, Content 10X, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. It's the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content. And if you just want help with your content repurposing, if you'd like someone to do it for you, we offer an end-to-end content repurposing service. So please do check us out. Everything about the book and our service is all at content10x.com. And also, please do follow me on social media. I'm at Content10x on all of the social media platforms. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode. I hope you found it really, really useful. Now, if you would like help with your content repurposing, then don't hesitate to get in touch with us here at Content 10x, because we offer a fully end-to-end content repurposing service. Just head to content10x.com. That's content10x.com. And if you prefer a DIY approach and you'd like to learn more about content repurposing in your own time, then why not get a copy of my book, Content 10x, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. It really is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content, and it's available in paperback, Kindle format, and in audiobook as well. So you can get it on Amazon or just head to content10x.com/book to find out all the places that you can get hold of my book. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode, and I will catch you in the next one.